welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein, and thank you for joining me today on March 22nd for James Allen's daily meditation reading from his Daily Reader, published at the early 1900s. It's been a great progression through March, and the whole year, we're coming up onto the end of the third month, and this whole first quarter of the year has been a fantastic experience, and I'm encouraged, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops over the course of the rest of the year. So I'm excited to keep this going. I'm feeling quite a bit better actually after COVID. It's still exhausted, the body's still tired, but we're doing okay. So looking forward to getting back on my feet though, and getting back to working and physical activity where you're at the gym and stuff like that, So, but this March 22nd's reading will be fresh to you and fresh to me, and you'll get my genuine response, reaction, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So, because this will be my first time reading it on this podcast while you're hearing it. So here we go. James Allen's Daily Meditation for March 22nd. In the knowledge of truth, there is freedom. Men suffer because they love self and do not love righteousness. And loving self, they love their delusions, and it is by these that they are bound. There is one supreme liberty of which no man can be deprived by any but himself. The liberty to love and to practice righteousness. This includes all other liberties. It belongs to the whipped and chained slave equally as to the king. And he who will enter into this liberty will cast from him every chain. By this the slave will walk out from the presence of his oppressor, who will be powerless to stay him. By this the king will cease to be defiled by his surrounding luxuries, and will be a king indeed. Wow. No outward oppressor can burden the righteous heart. Wow. What a beautiful picture he paints here, right? What a great reading that one is. Ultimate freedom, pretty much he's talking about here. The freedom from our external world. I love that. And how it applies equally, regardless of social status. Those bonds of self-love are so toxic and so limiting that we just didn't even know. All right, here we go. He opens with in the knowledge of truth there is freedom. In the knowledge of truth there is freedom. When you finally understand what spirituality is, when you finally take these measures and these practices to heart and apply them in your life and start to change your thinking and change your habits and how you conduct your life, right? When you begin to do that, there is freedom. It's very interesting because, like we were talking about a couple days ago, we associate peace with external peace to us. We associate freedom with external freedom to us, right? But it's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about freedom of the mind, freedom of the soul, freedom of the heart, freedom of these internal conditions. And when we have these internal conditions set right, they manifest externally to us. But we have to have the internal condition corrected first. We suffer. All right, well, let's go on to read. Men suffer because they love self and do not love righteousness. And loving self, they love their delusions. And it is by these they are bound. Right there. There's a great way it's placed. Right there. Men suffer because they love self and do not love righteousness. We're too concerned with feeling good, feeling pleasure, feeling all of these external things that are brought into us. Distraction a lot of time as well. Delusion. The love of ourselves and what we think will make us feel whole or complete or right, with the use of external things. We enjoy our passions, our lusts, our greed, our resentment and anger. We enjoy those things. Those are ours, That's what we believe is our character. That is just who we are, right? That's what we've said a lot of times. At least I've said it a lot. We don't love righteous living. Some of us appreciate righteous living. Some of us can look at someone else and go, I wish I could live like that. But we do not do it ourselves. I, for years, operated in that mindset that, oh man, I look at them, look at how they live. I could never do that. I wish I could, but I just can't. It was so limiting. It was because, and unbeknownst to me, really, I didn't really understand that this was what was going on, but I loved my defects. I loved my passions. I was ingratiated with them. I think that's the correct use of that word. I'm going to look it up later. And that was just what happened. It took a lot for me to shake loose from those and pursue this righteousness it's talking about here, right? I'm bound by my own delusions, by my own suffering, by my own love of self, which is interesting because self-love is a huge topic brought on today, and we're in one of the most pleasure-seeking societies ever, aren't we? We're in one of the most self-centered cultures ever to have existed, at least from my own personal opinion. Everything's about me and what I want and what makes me feel comfortable and safe and secure, demanding that the external world changes to my sense of peace and comfort. Consistently looking external to ourselves instead of looking inward and finding that peace and that strength internal to us. That's where it comes along. That's where it's supposed to be found, and we bring that to the world instead of demanding it from it. And we're bound to the world and we're bound to circumstance because of that. I was for years. And I found that freedom that he talked about in that opening line. He goes on to say, there's one supreme liberty of which no man can be deprived by any but himself. The liberty to love and practice righteousness. I like how he separates these things because love is a value, but it's also a way of being, to be loving. And there's a lot of literature, spiritual-based literature, that say we either operate from love or we operate from fear and selfishness, right? Those are the two, love and selflessness or fear and selfishness. So it's all about us and what we need, or it's all about you and being of service, or others and being of service, or God and being of service, or society, or whatever you'd like to insert there. The liberty. We have the freedom to love those around us. We have the freedom to practice righteousness, to practice the spiritual principles and disciplines in our life on a daily basis, to grow in them, to bring them forth. But until we actually break free of these delusions, we are deprived of this liberty and this practice of righteousness. We serve only ourselves and our selfish endeavors. A fear-driven lifestyle. He goes on, so the liberty to love and to practice righteousness, this includes all other liberties. So until we can get to love, until we can get to that point of love and to be able to practice righteousness, all other liberties are for naught. All other liberties are done with false intention, I would venture to say. That would be how I would phrase that. They would come from a place of fear. So I'm going to be honest out of fear for myself, not because it's the right thing to do. What are the intentions coming from? There's a very big shift that has to occur there. It may seem, you're still being honest, what's the point? There is a very big shift of whether you're thinking about actions in terms of yourself or thinking about actions in terms of others. And you can't get there unless you're functioning from a place of love. You can't get there to be genuinely altruistic, genuinely selfless, genuinely loving. It belongs to, this part, I loved how we put this in. It belongs to the whipped and chained slave equally as to the king. Does not matter who you are, where the place you find yourself in life, social class, culture. It belongs to the whipped and chained slave equally as to the king. And he who will enter into this liberty, into love, will cast from him every chain, every resentment, anger, lust, greed, vanity, vain desire, every desire, self-centered, fear-driven desire. Those are the chains that get cast from us. If we enter into love, those get cast away. And what a beautiful thing that is to be said. What a beautiful thing to be able to find that and speak from a place of love, to function from a place of love and understanding. By this, the slave will walk out from the presence of his oppressor. He will not be, his physical circumstance might not immediately change. It might not ever, I guess, is the real thing. But the sense of freedom and peace that can come over a person by having that shift in mindset, by having that mental condition corrected and finding that peace and inner freedom within oneself, cannot be touched by an oppressor anymore. You are not influenced by them. Your spirit cannot be broken by them because it is not, you haven't given them permission to do so anymore. What an amazing thing. What a beautiful thing. To own that for yourself, regardless of external circumstances. This is something that I think Viktor Frankl talked about in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Right? It's been written about by many people, but this was a very big thing over the last decade, and a lot of the horrors that have occurred. Oh, not decade, excuse me, last millennia, is that the correct term? For the last 1,000 years? Or even the last last century. That's so much. There has been so much found with that understanding. It's impactful. It's incredible to be able to find freedom in the midst of hell, in the midst of pain and pointless suffering and persecution. Who will be the slave will walk from the presence of his oppressor, who will be powerless to stay him. They can't force you to change your mindset back. You get to, when you find the peace and freedom we're talking about that comes only from an internal source of love, suddenly no one can sway that away from you. You can give it back, but you know the truth at that point. He goes on to talk about the king and say, by this the king will cease to be defiled by his surrounding luxuries and will be a king indeed. That's kind of saying there, are you, I like how it says defiled by his surrounding luxuries, like a king basking in his lust, vanity, ego, and greed, demanding these things from the world to feed his need to be recognized as king, right? A king is a slave to himself. A king is a slave to the title. But a true king will be free of those things. It will have this sense of love. Will have this sense of freedom without that attachment to these externals, without that attachment to these material, without that attachment to the individual or the public perception. The ability to function and do the right thing independent of the consequence that may be perceived, but doing the right thing anyway, is true freedom, is true love. And that is what it is to be a king indeed, he says here. So, and he finishes this the reading today with, no outward oppressor can burden the righteous heart. I guess it kind of ties into yesterday's with that statement too. If our heart is righteous, we cannot be oppressed, we cannot suffer. So it is ours own. The suffering is ours to own. The oppression is ours to own. Isn't that an amazing point of freedom? Because when we go into the state of righteousness and functioning from that righteous place, no one can touch it. They might try to inflict pain, to inflict suffering, to inflict retribution or retaliation, because when people see they've lost control over you, emotionally and mentally, there's fear. That instigates their fear. So, absolutely fantastic reading today. Again, I know I say that often, but I really loved this one. It's just, a lot of people are searching for that freedom today. A lot of people are searching to be for that release, for that sense of individual identity, almost like to cast away the chains that they found themselves bound by in this life, and they don't know how it's there. I'm telling you, there's freedom in just finding love and doing these right things and practicing this spiritual lifestyle and really walking this spiritual path and functioning from a place of honesty and truth and love. It will change your life. It's changed mine. I can guarantee you that. So, anyway, that was March 22nd's reading from James Allen's Daily Meditation. Really appreciate everyone jumping on and joining me for it. And I'm grateful that everyone keeps jumping on. If you'd like to, go ahead and head over to our Facebook page and give it a like and a follow. And I will continue to post the dailies updates on there, along with some quotes here and there. So I appreciate everything. And until next time, thanks.